Hi guys, if you like this video, please smash that like button. Click subscribe because that really helps us bring you more videos. And don't forget to click the bell and you'll get notified of our latest videos, or otherwise you might miss them. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you.
Welcome back to the Mission RV Services channel. Today we are going to be doing something different. We're going to be having some fun with water heaters. As much fun as you can have with a water heater. So anyway, we've had quite a few water heater videos in the past, how to diagnose them, you know, changing elements and things like that. But today we thought we'd show you the inner workings of a RV water heater. And we're going to be looking at a Suburban water heater flavor and just kind of go over some of the parts and you know, things that can go wrong and things to look at, but mostly just as kind of a part overview of a Suburban water heater. So let's get started, and we'll just start with what you normally see when you look at your water heater. And this right here basically is what you normally see. And see if we can get you a better view there. But so behind here we have some resettable fuses. We're going to take that apart and show you. So let's see if we can get to that point. Okay, so to get to these fuses here, we have two screws. You have one there and one there. So on a Suburban, these fuses are, one is for 120 volt and one's for 120 volt, one is for the 12 volt side. So we'll show you what that looks like. Obviously this is just on a back of the old pick 'em up truck bed here. So get that screw out of there. There we go. Okay, so usually there is like a gasket behind this, so it'll take a little bit of prying. And see if we can get that in there. Hold on a sec. Get you too close and personal. There we go. Alright, so now we get that off. Here's the cover. Here's that gasket we were talking about. So once we take these off, they generally need replacing. But here is our two different sides. So again, we have a 12 volt side and a 120 side. So on your left is our 120 side. So what happens here is the 120 volt comes into this, passes through here, and then it goes down to the water heater element, which is right back up in here. So if this goes out, it does have this reset. So basically if this overheats and it's on the 120, and then this is going to it'll pop if it gets too hot, and then you can get a reset out of them. You're not going to get many resets, but you do have to ask that question. If it does it once, you know, maybe there was hard to say, but there's some issue obviously why that popped. If it's really bad, you'll see this bar right here. You'll see this bar is completely frayed out, and then you have a nut here, and that's how you change this. But if this is popping continually, you might want to start asking the question, why is that happening? We could have a bigger issue with our water heater. The other side here on the right does the same thing as the left, but this is your 12 volt side. So your 12 volts comes in from your power supply, comes out, goes through the bar, comes out here, and then it comes back over to your board. Now the board generally sits in this spot over here. As you can see, here's the plug for that. Here's that other end of that red wire. Now this one doesn't have a board because this was a replacement water heater and the board is with it. But what we do have here is brand new crispy fresh board. Not crispy, electrical crispy, but just fresh, you know. And that board normally would sit right about here, once this is installed, so on a Suburban, the board is inside of a cabinet, generally on the back side of your water heater. Now if this was an Atwood flavor, then that would be, you would see that more in line with, it would be, the board would be up in this area here, so the burner assembly's here, and then your control board is up in this area. Doesn't Atwood does not have these fuses here, but it has two small little round pucks that kind of look like this here. So it basically, they look like these but without the buttons, and basically you have a wire in and a wire out, and those are your two fuses for your 120 and your 12 volt. Where you have the element on the front of an Atwood or on a Suburban, your electric element would be on the back side of an Atwood. Now the new Dometic water heaters, since Atwood was bought by Dometic, the ones they're doing new are going to be square like a Suburban, and they have relocated the electric element to the front. The board is in the front, so almost everything you need on the new Dometics is in the front, but that's a video for another time. Let's continue our journey. So our next step here is, we just talked about the fuses. So this over here is your gas valves. So the gas valves on this, so if we want to pull that, we pull this clip here. So sometimes when we're doing this, to get to the igniter, which we'll talk about in a minute, we would sometimes have to pull this in order to move this around to get to the to get this tube out in order to get to the igniter. So but on here there would be normally two screws on this, but those are missing. But I want to get over to this side of it. So here is where the signal comes in. So these are two valves, as you see if we can get you up in there. You have two valves. So when the board tells, so basically you used your hot water and you need to make more hot water, so you're either doing it off of gas through this igniter and the gas burner tube, or electric. But if we're using it on gas, so what it's going to do is this brown wire here, see how it comes in to here and then jumps over to this side, so these two outers, what that's going to do is the board is telling the gas valves it's okay to open. So once this gas valve opens up, the signal here, the black wires are ground. So if you see here, see the black wire comes down, it grounds to here, and then this is normally screwed to the casing, and that's grounded. So this is a positive and a ground. So as long as everything's working with the gas valves open up. Then the gas starts coming down through here. Next step is the board tells the igniter to fire off. The igniter fires, and then it makes a spark down inside of the tube here, which we're going to show you, and ignites that gas and then starts firing till it gets to the prescribed temperature. Once it gets to the temperature it needs, this switch will basically, it hits temp, and then it's going to send that signal to eliminate the power. So once it eliminates that power, then the board will shut down because it is satisfied at that point. So these temperature sensors have two features to them, right? One is an overheating issue. It's going to shut everything down because it wants to eliminate the source, right? It wants to eliminate 120, it wants to eliminate 12 volt if there's an issue. But it's also part of the sequence to say, hey, I'm satisfied. It sends that signal, it turns it from a closed loop to an open loop, and no power goes and everything shuts down. So once the board realizes it's satisfied, it closes the gas valves by taking power away from them, and it eliminates any kind of and then the flame, after it sparks, obviously that stops sparking. But there's also another feature of this gas valve in here, which we're going to pull that out. So get that wire out of there. Let's get in here. Let's pull out this igniter and show this to you. Again, we're just kind of doing a quick overview of this, just kind of show you some of the parts. Things you can definitely do check on your own. So now, when you pull this out, you'll see that the igniter has two functions, right? So this is a water heater igniter, looks similar to a furnace. So your volts from your board go through here, they come up to here, and this is where the spark actually happens. But it jumps between these two contacts. So once that ignites, then that lights your gas. This also has a secondary function. This is also a flame sensor. So once that ignites, it heats up, turns cherry red. You can see that when it's igniting. And it sends a signal back to the board to say we have a flame. If it doesn't sense a flame, it will try to light 2 more times after the first time. If it doesn't light after the 3rd sequence, it goes into propane lockout, which we've talked about before, which is just like your RV furnace. So it's just another safety feature. So once it goes into propane lockout, it won't try to ignite again. The gas valves lock out, so it's not sending any fuel through here. And then we get into that. So next I'm going to take this burner assembly off. I'm going to put you down for a second, and then we'll show you what the burner and the exhaust look like. Okay, so we are back. I'm trying to get good light here, but the light's kind of behind me. Anyway, so we're back. We left off. I was getting ready to take the burner assembly apart. So let's get back in here and look at that. So right here is your burner assembly. So when the flame ignites down here, so basically through this burner tube would be in here like that. So that gas comes through here, it ignites that spark, which creates the flame. That starts burning. It gets this chamber going. I don't know if we got a good shot of that for you guys or not, but flame comes through here, so flame goes in and exhausts out the top. It hits this baffle, but all of the magic happens in here, and that's what heats this up. So moving over to this side, we have our electric element. So probably not going to take the element all the way out for you, but let's at least expose it on here on a Suburban. Now again, this would be on the back side of the older Atwoods, but the new Dometics, the element will be on the front. So let's pull that off of here. Again, if you don't have one of these 9-in-1 screwdrivers, I totally recommend it. Take dang near probably 75% of your camper coach apart with one of these things. So now let's go ahead and we'll pop this off and try to get you in a good spot here. Again, these things never want to pop off, but if you can get up under there and pry it. Again, there is a gasket around that. I don't know if it's hard to see, but there is a gasket on there. So here's your positive and your common, and if again this goes to this. Now over here is your wiring. So we're kind of jumping around here. We were talking about the gas, and now move to the electric element. So gas heating, electric element heating. So one thing to remember on when you're working on not working but operating an Atwood or a Suburban water heater. So an Atwood water heater will only work on gas or electric. Doesn't operate both at the same time. So we hear that a lot. There's some misconceptions out there. People buy their camper and they're told that, you know, hey, you have electric and gas for faster water recovery. True statement if we're talking about a Suburban water heater. If we are talking about an Atwood water heater, they do have gas electric options on a lot of them. Some are only gas. And I think there's even a few out there that might be only electric, but most of them are either only gas or gas electric. And what happens is that on the Atwood, gas will always override the electric. So whenever you're working, gas always overrides the electric function. So, but on a Suburban, these will work together. So we talked a little bit about the control box, which operates the 12 volt side. Now let's talk about a little bit more about the electric side. So this electric element actually gets controlled through the 120 volts. You'll have a circuit breaker for it. Give you a second here. Hold on one second. These screws do not want to come loose today. Set you down. Okay, so let's take this apart. So now this particular one that was taken out is making a mess over here on the back of my truck, but you know, anything for you guys. So this one's using a standard 3-prong plug. So when this water heater was in place, it actually had an outlet that this plugged into. Many times your water heaters do not have this plug. They are hardwired in. So if you're a DIYer and this is a project you're thinking about taking on, swapping out a water heater, if you're comfortable with electricity and you know what you're doing, totally could do that. But if not, you're probably going to want to start looking at some differences in does mine plug in or is it hardwired? Because if it plugs in, it makes it a little bit easier than hardwired. When it's hardwired, you have to start making the connections. So right here we're going to show you. So when this plugs in, right, plugs into your wall, that power comes into here. So there's your ground, which is grounding it to this frame, and this ground comes from your circuit breaker box. So you have a relay here, right, that's calling for that electric. These relays can go bad up here. And then this black wire comes down, and then it comes to the element, and then has a neutral return. When these are connected together, that gets your 120 volts to here. Once it's satisfied, then this gives that signal, right? The 120 comes into here, out through here. Yeah, I kind of told you that backwards. Let's start that again. Okay, so your wire comes in from your wall, or in from your plug in this model. There's the 3 wires. So you have a neutral, a ground, and the black is hot. So that black goes into this relay, comes out of the relay, comes, I'm going to get this right. So this black comes into the relay, out of the relay. So this is when it's calling for that heat, right? So it comes through, and then it comes into here, comes out of here, and then down to here. And then it completes its loop by going back up, and that's where your neutral is. So when it has that neutral leg, so this completes the circuit down here, and then you get your element heats up. So I always say, if you think of an element, think of the movie Home Alone, when the bad guy, Kevin, puts the thing on the doorknob and the guy grabs it. That is a type of heating element. These elements don't work well if they're not in water though, folks. So if you dry fire your water heater, say it's the beginning of the season, you dry fire this on electric, that element is going to go pretty crispy pretty fast, and it's going to be out on you, and then you're going to be changing that out. So just kind of a quick overview of the wiring. But 120 comes in, goes through your thermostat control here, comes through, and then goes to your element. So same thing with your 12 volt. 12 volt comes in, the board acts as that relay, it tells it what to do, and then it comes out. So now you have a yellow wire, this yellow wire. So remember, I always, when we're talking about any 120 volt appliance in our camper, so if we're talking about a refrigerator or a water heater, the brains of the operation are always going to be 12 volts. So 12 volts is the brain, 120 volts is the brawn. But so even if you have 120 volts, if that board isn't telling that relay to send that 120 volt system into this thermostat down here, it's not going to work. So even if you have good 120 volt, if you have a bad brain, you're not going to get any kind of hot water supply out of here. Just something to think about. And then you also have an on-off switch down here. So sometimes you'll have a 2-phase on-off switch. So again, sticking to the 120 volt. I know I jumped around a little bit there, but some cases you'll come out and you have to turn your electric element on outside. So basically at your access door. So this is the trim ring that you would see, and the door you would see on your water heater. I got it upside down, but you get the point. So you'd pull that off and then you'd come out and turn this on. Well, sometimes you also have a 12 volt switch internally on your panel. So you would turn your 12 volt on inside and then turn it on here. But it gives you the option, if you're leaving, you could just turn it off at the panel inside. But just something to think about if you have a Suburban water heater, that you may have a on and an off out here. So, and then the last part out here, so now we have talked about our igniter, which we showed you. We talked about our igniter, which goes into the feed side. We talked about our exhaust. We've talked about our electric element. Anode rods is something a lot of people know. This anode rod is gone because, well, it was gone even though it was plugging the hole. But Suburbans use an anode rod because they have a stainless steel tank, and an Atwood does not. It just has a plastic plug. They are aluminum tanks. They do not use anode rods. They still need cleaning though. You have an on-off switch for your 120 volt, which runs your element, and you have a 120 volt thermostat and a 12 volt thermostat. You have a board. That's the brains of the operation, that either runs the 12 volt side or the 120 volt, or if you're using both, it'll run them both together. Then you have your wiring over here for your 120 volt supply. So you have your relay for your 120 going in, goes out to your, over to your temperature switch. But the relay is triggered by the control box through the yellow wire here. And that's what gets everything going. So the next thing I'm going to do here is put you down for 1 second. I'm going to reposition this unit, and then we'll show you what the back side of it looks like. This is what you usually don't see, is this styrofoam encasing. So you can kind of see that's our steel tank on a Suburban. Atwood would have aluminum, but it's surrounded by this styrofoam, which we'll just break off here. Get you a better view of that tank. So in the back we have, so down here would be where your cold water would come into the tank, goes in through there, then comes out and comes out through here. So cold water in, hot water out. Now sometimes you'll have a bypass in the middle to where the cold water would come through, hit that bypass, and then loop around. So you would turn these two off if you're winterizing, and then so you kind of have to imagine it there. But again, that's a story for another day. We're just talking about the actual water heater, but just kind of wanted you to see the back, what's under that styrofoam. Sometimes in a cabinet you can see it. A lot of times in fifth wheels, these are in the basement. But this is a 6-gallon tank here, but those are all your main components of the water heater. So pretty much have this front field stripped down now, and just kind of taking it apart as we went to show you. You know what, I'm going to take that water heater element out of there just so let's take a look at it and see what we got going on. Alright, so just for the heck of it, I wasn't going to take this out, but let's see what it looks like. Alright. Don't want to come out. Hold on. There we go. Might have to put you down for a second here. There we go. So that was one of the customer complaints. So one of the main reasons that we got our service call was because that this particular water heater wasn't really working on electric, and they didn't like the 6-gallon water supply, so they wanted to go tankless. And that's a dry fire. So this is generally what happens when this fails, dry fires. Just something happens. These things can work for a decade without an issue, but calcification, all of that, minerals on it, there's so many different things that could blow this out. But I just had a gut feeling that there was a little more to the story, so I figured, let's pull it out and show the folks back in YouTube land what this thing looks like. But that's what a bad one looks like, so that's a good one to keep on hand. So I was getting ready to wrap this video up. You know, I kind of just wanted to go through the parts of a water heater with you, since we talk about them a lot. And it's one of the things that as RVers we generally all have to work on. Furnaces is one, water heaters, you know, refrigerators. Those are probably the big three for just repair call outs, besides, you know, electrical and plumbing stuff. But, you know, showing the tank here and everything, I decided, you know, let's take it a step further. So I got the old finger cutter out and decided to let's show the folks what's inside one of these bad boys. So let's start here. So that's your the one here on the bottom. So that's your bottom. That's your top. Upside down here though. So let's flip it around so you can see it. So that's where your cold water comes in at, right here. And I will tell you that this is plastic. So don't know how many people knew that, but the inside of that's plastic. And this one up here, it's also plastic. So those fittings go into there. And let's flip this back over. And they're right up inside there. So where it screws in is actually stainless, but the inserts themselves are plastic. So those can get plugged up with sediment and junk. As you see in here, there's all kinds of, this water heater wasn't probably cleaned very well. You're gonna say, well, you know, I've seen worse, Drew. And you're right. But now when we get over to here, you have, look at that, all in there. So this one definitely needed a good cleaning. It's got a lot of sediment sitting down in there, and yeah, this one, it's rough. So you also notice too, there was a pressure relief valve, which we didn't really talk about, but that's right here. So when that builds up pressure in there, this will open up and relieve some of that pressure. This is your burn chamber. So this is where your flame comes in and exhaust goes out the other side. But this is what actually heats up right here. Let me step back a little bit. So this is the part that heats up and then gets that water. So when you see that tank, you're like, well, that's a good amount of water, but think of how much is getting taken up by the heating element, which is why that tank looks like it might be a little bit bigger. But what you're getting is the tank doesn't actually hold a full 6 gallons of water, because if you think about that tank size, when we put it together here, just throw that back up for a second. When you think about that, you're probably thinking to yourself, you know, that doesn't really look like the size of, say, a water jug, a 5-gallon jug you'd get for a water machine. That's about the same size, but what it is, it's not actually holding a full 6 gallons of water. It's giving you a 6-gallon supply of hot water. So think about that when you're doing your water heater. So like the new Dometics, one of their claims is that I believe it's a 12-gallon or a 10-gallon water heater will give you roughly 15 gallons of hot water. I might have to do a little check on that, but I know it's a few gallons more than its capacity. So, but just something to think about. So really, it's the gallon rating is based on you know, supply, not necessarily based on tank capacity. But I thought, you know, I had a grinder, I had a tank that I wasn't going to use, and we were talking about it. I figured, you know what, how many people have actually seen the inside of one of these tanks? Not a lot in there, is there? Just a burn chamber and some entry and exit tubes. And you know, if If the anode rod was in there, you'd see that. If the element was still in there, you would have seen that. You did see that element was pretty rough, but that's kind of the basic overview of an RV water heater. If you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you see more of these. Hit the notification bell so you get told about new videos we put out. If you have any questions or comments about this video, please, put them on down below. Get those fingers moving. I know that guy right there is going to do it. I know you. I know you're going to do it. Look forward to that comment. And we also look forward to the encouragement. This is our first video of 2024. So we want to thank you for everything and all your support in 2023. We love doing this. We love sharing information. We love your feedback and your comments. We'd love to make more of these videos for you in the coming year. If you have anything you want to see a video about, comment below. Let us know, or even if you know somebody who might be interested in this, go ahead and share it with them. But until next time, this has been Drew with Mission RV Services. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.